In this video, I'll be talking about ESG investing, the growth in ESG investing over recent years, and the potential benefits and drawbacks. My name is Joe Condy, and I'm an investment consultant at Quantum Advisory. ESG, or environmental, social, and governance, can mean many things to different people, but it's generally accepted that ESG investing is a strategy and practice which incorporates ESG factors into the investment decision-making process, plus active ownership of your investments. It's meant to complement traditional financial analysis and portfolio construction techniques because it aims to uncover additional risks and opportunities that traditional financial analysis may miss. Environmental factors reflect the impact of a company on our planet and the natural world. So these span from climate change, resource depletion, biodiversity, pollution, and waste. Investors are increasingly recognizing that long-term damage to our planet and the natural world is obviously a negative thing in itself, but it can potentially pose a long-term threat to asset returns and investment outcomes as well, if the risks or the issues are not properly managed. Social factors reflect a company's impact on employees, customers, communities, and the wider society. So these span from employee or human rights, slavery, child labour, poor working conditions, and product liability, for example. If companies mismanage these issues, it can have a knock-on effect on things like productivity of workforce, employee well-being, and health and safety. Also, the liability and reputational risk associated with poor management of these issues can be material. Finally, the governance factor is built on the foundation that companies with good governance perform better. The same can also be said for investors like pension schemes, endowment funds, and charities. In our view, governance sits at the heart of ESG, because having the proper structures and people to make decisions can positively influence returns, but can also impact on the environment and society as well. It covers things such as executive pay, bribery and corruption, tax management, as well as board structure, so things like diversity and independence, for example. ESG investing has grown significantly over recent years. This has largely been driven by investor demand and the regulators or the government's emphasis on the importance of this topic, particularly on investor and beneficiary outcomes, as well as a push by asset managers. Investors are recognising that companies with stronger ESG practices may be better positioned to succeed over the long term, as they tend to be more resilient to various risks. Whilst not specifically ESG, the graph you can see on the screen shows the flow of assets into and the cumulative assets under management of funds designated as sustainable by the prospectus. And as we can see, the total AUM and flows into funds have increased considerably over the past 10 years or so. Whilst we have seen a slight dip over the past couple of years, potentially as a result of some pushback, particularly from politicians in the US, and because of some underperformance of ESG funds during certain periods, the general trend of direction is clear, and we can see this continuing into the future, particularly in the UK at least. So I'll now talk about some of the potential benefits and drawbacks of ESG investing. In theory, integrating ESG should reduce risk and enhance returns over a long-term time horizon, because it considers more risks than traditional financial risks and adds new forward-looking insights into the investment process. Some types of ESG investing can also achieve certain societal objectives alongside financial returns. Some people say that these are at odds with each other, but they don't always have to be. And thirdly, beneficiary engagement is another benefit. For example, member engagement in DC pensions is usually fairly low. If trustees can show members how their investments are contributing positively to society and the environment, then this could result in increased member engagement, which is always a good thing. But integrating ESG into the decision-making process does have some drawbacks and has attracted some criticism over recent years. Some argue it's less about doing good and more about looking good. Here in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority has even recognised that this is a potential problem, and have recently introduced some new rules surrounding anti-greenwashing and sustainable labelling for retail investment funds. Another drawback of ESG is that the sheer broadness of the topics covered often leads to complexity and can overwhelm investors, and makes it difficult to narrow down on what is actually important to them. And lastly, the evidence that integrating ESG can deliver improved financial performance is not as clear-cut as the theory suggests. And depending on what studies you read, the conclusions can differ. To conclude, in our view, whether or not investors integrate ESG strongly should ultimately be determined by their own beliefs and objectives, but they should have due regard to the regulatory landscape that they operate in. This has been a high-level overview of ESG investing and the potential benefits and drawbacks. If you want to learn more about this topic, please feel free to contact us.